Now, there are a couple ships that I personally really like, but unfortunately I didn't have a lot of time to fly them. One of these ships is the Prophecy 2 Command. Now, this is one of the scariest command battlecruisers in the game. The Prophecy 2 Command can have both tank and very good DPS. So today I will be flying this ship, and I will be rolling one of the tier 10 storylines, Angel or Devil, with this ship. Now the Angel or Devil storyline is one of the more difficult ones, and I would say one of the more interesting ones as well. Now the Prophecy 2 Command has some very nice stats. You get very good drone command range, you get excellent command burst strength effects, which are going to be very important. The command bursts are good for a fleet, but they're also good for solo. You get very nice armor resistance, drone speed, and drone damage, which honestly is looking pretty good on the Prophecy 2 Command. Should work really well with the drone bombs. And this is one of the ships that I like to combine tank and DPS, as you will see later on. It has 4 drones, 3 high slots, 3 medium slots, 5 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs. The Prophecy 2 Command is of course primarily a armor tank, don't shield tank this ship. Now one thing where the Prophecy 2 Command might kind of be, I would say, lacking is the capacitor. 2880 gigajoules. Some cruisers have better capacitor than the Prophecy Command, but in the longer run it shouldn't be much of a problem, especially if you consider the fact that you can add capacitorics and the command bursts actually help with capacitor usage on the armor repairs. And surprisingly, the Prophecy 2 Command is actually fairly fast. Not the fastest obviously, but it's quite speedy for a tanky battlecruiser. Now I have 1102.06 DPS with this ship. I have medium missile launchers, the classic ones. They have about 36 kilometer range, but their performance is, I would say, average. The main DPS comes from the drones. I have a armored command burst and a skirmish command. The armored command burst is going to improve your armor repairs. It will improve the armor resistance, which is very important, while the skirmish commands will give you extra afterburner speed, more agility. It will give you extra range on the webs and on the scrambler, which honestly can be very crucial if you get jumped while running a low sec encounter or storyline. Can give you a good advantage over the pirate that has attacked you. And for the drones I use Valkyries. However, I would say that you can combine Valkyries with infiltrators, basically do explosive and EM damage. In the low slots I have one large armor repair. Now the armor repair will be improved with the implant and with the general units, and of course it will be improved with the command burst. I have one medium capacitor battery, one afterburner, and dual drone damage amplifiers. Now here you can take a look at the tank of the ship. I did keep the old rigs that I had on the Prophecy 2 Command. Of course, you don't have to go with the 4P rigs. The cheaper 3P rigs also work really well. And I combined armor resistance with armor repair. You can basically use the same setup with the 3P rigs, although I only have 3 rig slots, while here you have 4, but the extra rig slot is not going to make a big difference. However, the price difference is going to be very noticeable, and the performance difference is going to be about the same. Now as for the rigs, as for the engineering rigs, 1 capacitor rigs and 2 integrations that combine power grid and capacitor, because I wasn't able to fit that 1 medium capacitor battery into this ship. The one thing that I'm worried about with this current build is the capacitor. Now as for the rigs, as for the implants, my apologies, the Bombard implant is one of the implants that you can use, but you can also use the thermal circulation that will give you extra 20% armor resistance. Depends on what type of ship you would like to fly. Both are good, and both are definitely going to work in different scenarios. Again, it depends on what type of ship you want to fly. Now I will use the armor boost unit, basically to improve the armor repair on the single large armor repair, because I feel like I will be needing that in this storyline, because I've heard that this storyline has some very nasty elite ships, and overall they use a lot of target painters, so I expect a vicious fight up ahead. And here you can take a look at the other units. I have the units for the drone damage amplifiers, basically that should improve the DPS. And let's undock and let me show you the active stats of this ship. Now I have the Exile Nanocore, which is obtainable from the Concord Pass, of the more interesting cores in the game. And of course, it is a free Nanocore, a very good one. Now, okay, well, I forgot one important thing. I forgot fuel. With the command burst modules, you will be needing a lot of fuel. So before undocking, make sure that your fuel bay is topped up, or make sure that you have some fuel in the ship's cargo. That way, if you end up running out of fuel, you can easily just refuel on the go. Okay, let's refuel, and it did eat about 4,000 plasmoids, which is okay. Now the fuel bay and the energy should be maxed out. Now I can actually undock and use the command burst modules. Now the command burst modules will prevent you from warping, because they should give you a lot of points. That's one thing that you should keep in mind, and the effect lasts for about 60 seconds. Okay, let me adjust the modules. I use the two drone groups basically, but you can combine all of them to be one big group, or if you use two separate type of drones, then this is basically how the layout is going to look. 952.91 meter per second is the afterburner speed, which is not bad for this ship. 2187 is the armor repair. It repairs once every 7.26 seconds, which is not bad. Okay, now let's turn on the command burst modules, and let's take a look at the effect. Now the tank 102,000, 66, 73, 73 and 72% resistance, which is, not bad, and 1005.02 meter per second is the afterburner speed. It did improve the speed a little bit, and now the speed is a little bit over 1 kilometer per second. 15.16 and 16.32 kilometer is the range on the web and on the scrambler. Overall, pretty solid stats. Now 1.2 thousand, almost 1.3 thousand DPS with one amplifier, and with the second one it's 1468.91 DPS. With the drum bombs, the actual number is about 6,000 DPS, because the drum bombs do triple your DPS output for a short amount of time. So you do get pretty good tank, and you get terrifying DPS for a short amount of time with the Prophecy to command. One of the scariest ships to tackle with a cruiser, because usually these things are hard to kill. Now I have these two units, and I will be testing out the drum performance with one of these units removed, and then I'll just remove the other one while returning the previous one, so that we can get a idea how the two units affect each other. Now, at the moment, according to the effect of the units, I should have the best DPS, but the cycle time will be long, and the duration time of the amplifiers will be shorter, but you get a lot of DPS for a short amount of time. So it's probably going to be interesting to play around with the general units on this ship. And with the adaptive armor hardener, you lose a lot of capacitor, and this is why I'm not really I don't feel really comfortable to fly this ship with this current build, with the
Undocking.
with the adaptive armor harden without the capacitor battery, because in a longer fight the extra capacitor is actually going to be very useful, so the capacitor battery might be a good idea to use over the adaptive armor hardener, or you can actually sacrifice a bit of DPS in order to get the extra capacitor, but again, you will be losing DPS, and 130,000 hit points, which is actually really good. 76, 81, 81 and 80% resistance on this prophecy. Now the DPS is going to be about the same, because I still use the drone bombs with the same drone damage amplifiers, and of course with the same general units. So honestly, a pretty tanky ship on paper, and it looks to be pretty terrifying. Now the Prophecy 2 command is, like I mentioned before, one of the hardest battlecruisers to tackle. I did tackle a couple of them with the Stratios, and I can tell you that they have teeth. Very scary ships, and overall very scary tank and DPS. Which is interesting, because most of the ships have to sacrifice one aspect of the fit in order to have DPS or tank, while the Prophecy can actually combine both of them, which is very interesting. So let's dock up and let me show you some other
Docking
tricks
request
that
accepted.
you can do with this ship. So I did talk about the general units, and I usually like to combine both DPS units for the short bursts of high DPS. I do that on the Macariel, I do that on some of the other ships that I fly, but in some cases having only one of these units is actually the better idea, because that way you get the full effect from them. You can basically pick the passive DPS, or you can pick the active DPS. Again, both have their unique use and purpose, so in the end it all depends on what type of combat you have with your ship. Now 1102.06 DPS, which is about the same, so this unit will give me extra hot DPS with the amplifiers, and it will be time to undock, and let's see what kind of numbers I get from the DPS on this ship.
Undocking.
Now for this storyline, I believe that I will need extra DPS, and this is why I picked this ship. I thought to run with a faction cruiser. I will do it with a faction cruiser next, that's for sure. But to get familiar with the mission, I did pick one of these ships that has a lot of tank, and it has decent DPS, so I really think that I won't have a lot of problems. Now 19.58% is the damage bonus. Okay, the effect is definitely noticeable. Let me quickly double check the unit just to be sure that I did not miss anything. Drone damage amplifier efficiency optimization, drone damage effect 23% are not activated. Okay, so it works while they are not activated. Basically, you get a passive DPS boost from these general units, which is nice. Passive DPS is always very useful. Okay, let's take a look at the active DPS now. I expect the active DPS to be a little bit lower, 1,200, and with the second one it's 1.3. Now it's actually lower, 130 DPS lower to be accurate, which is interesting. So the two units can work, but you will have a long cooldown and you will have a short runtime. In some cases that's actually not bad, especially in PvP where you need most of the DPS. It can be very useful and good if your target is a Stratios or something similar to that, because you want the Stratios to be killed as quickly as possible. Now I thought for a second that my game crashed here, but it's just my internet being the usual, horrible, and my apologies for the long dock time there. Okay, let's now check out the implants again, and let me return the previous general unit on the prophecy, and I'll remove this one. Now this means that my passive DPS will go down, but the active DPS should be increased. That's basically what the units do. And I believe it's the same for the other damage mods out there. You can use both of them at the same time. You will have higher DPS but longer cooldowns with shorter duration times of the module being active.
Undocking.
So in the end, I guess very situational, and it all depends on what type of ship you like to build or what type of combat you are going to be participating with your ship. Okay, well, let's find out how much DPS do I push now. 1077.16, so a little bit lower cold DPS, still pretty good, over 1000. And the damage bonus is reduced, but the activation time is 44 and delay 156. Let's find out what's the active DPS going to look like. With 1253.56, with the second one it's 1433.17, so the DPS difference is about 30 DPS, which is interesting. So you still get higher DPS, but in some other areas the effects will be drastically nerfed. Kind of
Docking request
difficult
accepted.
to come to a conclusion with what's actually better to use. I guess all three options are viable. It all depends on, again, what type of combat you will be doing with your ship. Okay, so let's roll up the mission, Angel or Devil. So this is a 3-part mission. You have 3 combat sites, and you have 1 part where you have to dock in a station. Okay. Now usually the first waves, the first part is usually easy. However, I have been told by friends and by fellow players that this mission, near the end of the last 3rd wave, basically wave 4 and 5, that you have a lot of very nasty elite ships. And I believe they told me about a elite battleship that is extremely fast,
Autopilot engaged.
and a elite cruiser that's also ridiculously fast. So we will find out how the Prophecy will perform in such a hostile environment. Again, I trust my builds. Usually before I go and make a build, I do a lot of testing to see that it can hold to the expectations, and most of the builds do get a passing grade. However, some of the builds that I never released basically ended up being very bad, so I never uploaded, I never basically showed that build because it failed. Basically I died in the test, so the build did not work. So as you all guessed, since this is uploaded, it means that the build passed. Now, back when I tested out the build, it passed, in classic high second counters, in low second counters. It was dominating the normal missions, but I haven't really tested out the build in a storyline, and perhaps it's a little bit tough on the Prophecy to go and yeet this ship into a Mimitar tier 10 storyline that is already classified as one of the more difficult ones to do. But again, a good stress test is always a good stress test. So if the Prophecy dies, you will witness the build fail in the storyline mission. And of course that means that I'll have to go and change some of the things that I have equipped on the Prophecy. Now the first wave was surprisingly small, and don't be fooled, because this is a 3-part mission. The first waves, the first part, I suspect is going to be fairly easy, so I don't expect much challenge from the first part of the mission. The second part might be getting a little bit more serious near the end, but I still believe that it should be fairly easy to go through, and I believe that the tank of the ship will hold really well. Now, the thing where The place where I'm starting to be a little bit worried is definitely going to be the last two waves of basically the third part of the mission. Mostly because I'm not really sure if those elites are going to be staying within the 250 kilometer range. If they go above that, they warp back to the center of the map and they repair. So you basically will have to go through their shield armor again, which might be problematic, but that's just my guess. And this is just, you know, my expectation on what might happen while I run this mission. But so far, as expected, it does run fairly smooth. I will say that these ships feel a bit tankier than usual. I'm pretty sure that's because they are Mimeter ships. This is probably why this storyline is classified as one of the more difficult ones, besides the fact that you have to fight with some very nasty elites down the road. Now, I remember running some of the previous storylines a long time ago, and they did have these very fast cruisers, and I think I will have to face these cruisers again. And I think this is where the longer web and the scrambler will help. If they try to tackle me, I can easily web them and scramble them before they can do. And they do seem to be a little bit tankier than the usual ships. Now the DPS is still really solid for a drone boat. After all, you have to remember that the drone boats are not really known for their DPS. The drones have their use, and of course they have their weakness and advantage. The advantage could be in their good tracking. They can easily catch smaller targets, excellent for defense against pirates. They do kill frigates, interceptors, tackle cruisers fairly easily. However, the drawback might be the lack of DPS. Sometimes the drone controls can be a little bit funky. By funky, I mean sometimes
Enemy ships detected.
the drones refuse to listen to your commands, and I think you will notice that in this video in
We're under attack.
couple minutes. And I'm not really sure when those issues started to occur. I personally never had a lot of problems with the drones, but a lot of players told me that that's the case, and I've also heard that the developers will do something more with the drones, but I'm not really sure exactly what, so I guess we will find that out when the time comes. And while in the background, something that you can't see, we have just destroyed one Gnosis without any modules, which is kinda weird. I don't know. But anyway, back to the main screen. So this is the next wave. I kind of already lost count on what wave this is, but should be slowly nearing the end of the first part. you always go and shoot down the smaller targets first. Bombers, destroyers, cruisers, frigates, they should be your primary target, while the big battleships will be the last ones, mostly because the small ships represent a higher threat level, because they can easily approach you and web you. Now, I did mention that in this storyline they will carry a lot of target painters, and if I was using a micro warp drive, my signature radius is probably going to look like the signature radius of a capital ship. So for this mission, a afterburner is definitely the way to go, and I feel like drone boats might be the best option for it as well. Drone boats or long-range kite battleships, kite cruisers, kite battle cruisers, because of the ridiculously fast elite ships that might spin you around the map. So that's basically what I expect to happen, but of course we will see what will happen when I go and reach that part. So far the mission appears to be quite chill and basically no problems. I can easily speed tank most of these ships. The armor is holding out really well. Now, one aspect of this ship that I would definitely improve or change, and I think later on in the video you will see what I'm talking about. Now, I already mentioned that the capacitor on the Prophecy 2 command is not the best from the start. So in the longer run, the capacitor on this ship with a large armor repair will definitely go low. And if you are not quite familiar with capacitor management, basically repair your armor only when needed and boost your shield when needed, save the capacitor as much as possible, then you might run out of capacitor with this ship fairly quickly. Now, if you're familiar and if you're quite skilled with the capacitor management, then this is not going to be a big problem, but it's one thing to keep in mind. Now, you can technically use 2 medium armor repairs. They are easier on the capacitor, but they eat up 2 slots, and you will have to sacrifice probably a bit of DPS, or you will have to sacrifice the capacitor battery in order to maintain the ship in its current form. So that's why I have decided to use a large armor repair with a general unit for armor repair boost. Now, at first I also thought, and you can actually do this fairly easily, you can use the
Autopilot engaged.
efficiency armor repair unit. Basically it will reduce the armor repair, but it will also reduce the capacitor usage, and that is actually quite good in the longer run.
Autopilot engaged.
So that was the first part. Wasn't that difficult. And now let's go and
Undocking.
warp to the second part or third part, depends on how you look at things. The high sec part is kind of counted in the whole progress of the storyline. So this is the second combat site. First wave has 7 ships, and the first target painter has shown itself. Well then, this is where the fun begins. Or actually no, it's not. The fun will start when I have to brawl with the elite battleships near the end. 21 kilometers per second. You know, the current Valkyries that I have are fairly fast, so you can basically chase down any tackle ship that might be problematic. And I've heard that the implant level up materials have become cheaper, and also I have seen the implants becoming cheaper as well, because currently it's kind of easy to obtain them. And every time the implants become quite easy to obtain, you will notice the price of the implants on the market go down. So that's basically the moment where you should be buying one of the implants. This is the first wave, slowly going through the ships. Okay, time to welcome the next wave of enemy ships. And there is one secret that a lot of pirates don't want to tell you.
We're under attack.
The highest pirate traffic in the game is located in the Galante regions. Basically, Cervantes or Galante regions have the highest number of pirates. Meanwhile, Amar Space, Mimitar Space, has the least number of pirates and can be classified as the safest, but the safest is in quotation marks because I'm fairly sure after players hear what I just said, they will go to Amar Space. So enjoy the safety that you get, because I'm fairly sure Amar Space about to become very interesting. Now that's mostly because the Galante missions and Calder missions are fairly easy to do. Meanwhile, the Amar and the Mimitar missions can be quite difficult. So that's one of the reasons why there is so much traffic in Galante Space, but not so much traffic in other regions, and that's why most pirates, including myself, is mostly hunting in Galante Space. So if you want to run the missions in relative safety, then you can easily go to Amar Space. Deep Amar Space, deep low sec, is also fairly safe. Last time I checked out, the deep low sec in Mimitar Space was also fairly safe. So you have these regions that are relatively safe, and if you want to do missions in peace, then it's basically the place you would want to go. Now, of course, you can expect the missions to be more difficult, but I guess having trouble with a mission is definitely a better option than having trouble with pirates, because pirates, might camp your mission for a while. They might wait for you to return. There is like a million different tricks that we use in order to catch a ship that is running missions in low sec. However, the storyline ships, once you get a hang of how to deal with them, it's pretty straightforward from that moment, so you don't have to worry about them as much as you have to worry about pirates. And of course, the amount of pirates that you will encounter will be a lot less, because most pirates are in Galante Space. So, did I just ruin the Amar storyline mission Mars? I have no idea, hopefully not. I'm just saying what I noticed while roaming around, and that's basically my experience with it. Perhaps I'll go pay a visit to Amar Space to see if I can run a storyline, but I will probably fall asleep while running storylines. I'm known for that. I already fallen asleep like a couple times while running stories, so I'm not really someone who's quite skilled at running storylines, to be completely honest with you, mostly because the stories became a bit more serious lately. But so far this prophecy command is holding really well, absolutely no issues with the ship, it runs smooth. The capacitor is in a good shape so far, the armor is also in good shape. Speed tanking works, they have two target painters on me so far, but so far the effect is not as obvious as it will be later on. It's funny because I already kind of know what's about to happen, because I've already done so many tests I've built so many ships, and overall I've done so many missions that based on the stuff that I see here, I can technically very accurately predict what's about to happen in the later stages of the mission. So usually when I do a prediction like this, it comes true, and I kind of feel a little bit worried because I think that there's a good chance that this ship might get yeeted later on, mostly because of the target painters and mostly because of the amount of ships that will be shooting at me. So I'm very glad that I don't have a micro warp drive. I actually thought to go with a micro warp drive kite build, but at the same time I know that they use a lot of target painters, so that would not be a good idea. So I did go with an afterburner. Hold a second, there is something weird happening in local here on my main account. What is this? This is some very good salt that I'm reading here. Yeah, there's some weird salt. Let's just go back to the prophecy. There's been a lot of salt lately, and yes, surprisingly, well, or not surprisingly, I think I should be good. The mass reporting seems
We're
to...
under attack.
Well then, 16 ships have spawned in. And as usual, I will focus on the smaller ones first, and then I can focus on the big ones, because the small ships represent a higher threat level than the big ones, at least at the moment. 4 target painters, well, 3 target painters, 2 Nosferatus and 1 Scrambler. Now, the good thing for drones is that I don't have to go and chase around the elite ships that are flying at 5 kilometers per second. The drones have enough speed to keep up with them, so my main ship here doesn't have to go and chase them, which would be the case if I were using a Phantasm or something similar. Okay, well, this is the last battleship of this wave. So far it's been quite smooth, no issues at the moment. Let's see. Oh, well then. Looks like this was the last ship of the second combat site. Well then, I guess it will be time to go to the next combat site. The third one, and yeah, this is where the real fun begins, because the third part is probably going to be the most difficult one. So we already started, and my shield is already getting low. They have 2 target painters, well, 1 target painter now, and I'm working my way with the small ships first. Now it might get a little bit confusing with the targets, with the primary target here, because you can see me sometimes go after a cruiser instead of a closer ship. That's mostly because of the orbit. I also have to be careful not to get too close to some of the elite battleships, because their webs are actually a lot stronger than the webs for the other normal ships, and those webs can be quite dangerous. So my current orbit is 32 kilometers, so I have to be very careful not to run into the lethal range of some of the elite ships. And so far, it's going smoothly. However, I can tell you that the ships became a bit more serious. Which again is to be expected because this is the last wave, and here I think my armor will start taking a bit more damage, and this is the moment where the capacitor will play a big role in this ship's survivability. My apologies for the weird silence or weird cut, depends on what kind of editing I do on that part. Had something to look at on the main screen. For a second I thought a Nestor popped in. Would be too good to be true. Well then, this wave has a lot of battleships, and as you can see so far, my armor is definitely taking some hits. Well, thankfully, the speed tank works very good. If the ship was just a little bit faster, I'm fairly sure that I would be able to speed tank better, and I would be able to even reduce the incoming damage even more. Now, I find it kind of funny that some of these ships use missiles. I actually saw one Tempest striker yeeting rapid missiles at me, which is kind of cursed, kind of hilarious, and I kind of, wish that the developers change that, because the Tempest striker is actually a turret battleship. It doesn't use missiles, but I guess in this storyline, for some weird reason, they like to use missiles. However, the cannons also do some very nasty damage. And the cannons, the large cannons with target painters, do track fairly easily. And I can tell you, the elites will track even better with target painters, and because they can also be very fast, they can keep you at range, which means that they can easily improve their damage done to your ship. But so far, this prophecy is holding out really well. I'm very happy with the result, but I will not be 100% sure that this build is good unless I clear the whole thing, so I will give my final opinion on this build when I finish the storyline. Now, finishing the storyline means two things. I clear the mission, complete it, or I die. So, in both scenarios, I do finish the mission, so we will find out what will happen in the next, I don't know, 20 minutes or something like that. But so far it seems to be going fairly smoothly, and no complaints from me. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to manage like 3 accounts, especially when I record and do PvP at the same time. and sometimes the PvP part requires most of my attention. So my apologies if I do abruptly stop talking. That's because I'm mostly focusing on another thing that is in the background, but I'm still piloting the prophecy here. And so far, it's not that bad. It does work. It does work really well. The drone bombs seem to be delivering their promised DPS. Now with the drone bombs, I could actually triple my DPS even more. However, that would require me to constantly pull in and pull back the drones, which honestly can be sometimes a little bit tiring, so the remote reload is heaven, and I think it's a pretty good change. It makes, however, there is one catch to it. It makes the drone bombs quite similar to the barrage implant. Now the barrage implant has very high burst, and of course it has a very long recharge time. Now the drone bombs have a 60 second cooldown, and they give you a DPS output and alpha damage output that is, I would say about the same as the barrage implant, but a much faster reload. So in a way, the drone bombs became a bit more stronger than the barrage implant, but that's me just comparing the two implants.
We're under attack.
Well then, the next wave has spawned 22 ships, and yeah, this is where things are probably going to be a little bit dangerous.
We're under attack.
5 target painters and battery low, typical. That's basically the low battery is indicating the future of this capacitor of this ship. And I'm getting yeeted by missiles, turrets, and I'm taking some good damage. 5 target painters, 2 scramblers, 3 Nosferatus. So that means I have to go and focus down on the scramblers first. However, I'm focusing down on the target painter ships because the target painters is what's allowing them to do so much damage to me. They have increased my signature to be quite big, and it means that they can nail better shots at this prophecy, but the armor is holding quite well so far. I try to time the capacitor battery with the armor repairer. That way the battery capacitor gets used while the main capacitor can be saved for emergency. And here I'm trying to destroy 2 ships at the same time, the small ones, because the small ones have the scrambler applied on this ship. And now I don't plan to warp out if things get dangerous, because I know in a lot of cases in a real situation the player cannot warp out, so if this ship has to die, it will die. It will give me valuable info on what to fix on the build. Now so far, the thing that I will definitely fix is the capacitor. I don't like the current capacitor performance. It does work well, but it's, not as good as I wish that it is. So the capacitor definitely needs to be improved. The tank is okay. The speed, I would say, could be improved a little bit, but 1 kilometer per second is already fairly fast for a prophecy. I'm glad that I don't have a micro warp drive. It would be, let's say, quite unpleasant to use a micro warp drive in this mission. I'm fairly sure I would have been yeeted in this part if I had a micro warp drive. My signature on this ship would be like 15 kilometers, and that would definitely do some serious damage. Now here I will focus on eliminating the ships with target painters, all the ships with webs and scramblers have been removed, so in order to reduce the damage that I'm taking, I will have to go and focus on the elite ships. Now usually the elites are not this dangerous. Usually the elite ships can be left for the last ship to kill, but in this mission the elites simply have to go because they will be doing some pretty nasty damage. As you can see, my armor is holding out so far. However, the capacitor is slowly going down, and this is the moment where I kind of wish that I went with the armor repair bonus on this nanocore. It gives you extra 22.5% armor repair, which would be amazing in this situation. Basically, I would use the capacitor a lot less and I would repair a lot more armor per cycle, which in return means that I will use less capacitor, and that means the capacitor on this ship will last much longer. So the elite battleship that I'm talking about is this one, and well, it's actually faster than my own ship. I cannot approach it, that's how fast it is. They are using micro warp drives, so if I could approach them and if I could scramble them, then I could probably maintain a 15-16 kilometer orbit around them. I think that battleship goes about 1.5 to 2 kilometers per second because they are still easily orbiting me. The elite battleship is destroyed. Okay, well, let's go after the last remaining battleships. Now this is not a final wave, we have wave number 5, and let me take some screenshots of this prophecy, because perhaps it could be the last screenshots of this prophecy that I'll make in this video. If this ship gets heated, well, at least it looked pretty good. Okay. Let's see what will happen. Let me start to burn out. Now my idea here is to draw the smaller ships first, so that there is no scramblers on me. However, they already yeeted 5 target painters at me, and yeah, my armor is definitely taking some hits. 8 target painters. They definitely like target painters, that's for sure. And this means my armor repair has to be activated at all times, because yeah, the armor repair is barely keeping up with the incoming damage. However, I think it's manageable. One scrambler, 1 web, 3 Nosferatus, 8 painters. That's definitely not looking good. Okay, drone bombs have been applied. Okay, the armor is going back up, so perhaps I was worried for no reason. Two webs and my speed has been drastically reduced. Those are some very strong webs. 6 target painters, okay. Let me do some manual orbiting. My speed has been severely, well, was severely reduced but I have escaped the webs, so I can try and maintain a proper orbit now. The capacitor is running low. This is what I was talking about, and this is the thing that I was worried about. The capacitor cannot keep up with the armor repair for a very long time, but the capacitor battery kicked in, so I can save a couple cycles with the capacitor battery. I have been webbed, and these are some strong webs, as you can see, because they are reducing my speed by about 40%. But once the web has been removed, the ship goes back to full speed, and I will focus on eliminating the smaller ships. Armor at 76%, capacitor at 39-40%. Capacitor battery is still in cooldown, which means I will have to go into the energy save mode on the Prophecy and use the capacitor and use the armor repair only when the capacitor goes to a certain point, which would be 43%. Gives me enough time to recover enough capacitor for another cycle, but they are slowly going through my armor. I really need to find all of the ships that have target painters on me, because the ship is slowly going down. It's a very slow process, but the capacitor battery is going to become alive again in a couple of seconds, and I think I'll be able to recover a lot of armor with the capacitor battery active. Okay, armor at 53%. It's still a pretty tanky Prophecy. I'm surprised, and I'm pleasantly surprised that this thing is still alive. Capacitor at 50%, 46%, armor at 68%, 15 ships left. I still have 5 target painters on me, which is definitely not helping at maintaining the armor. Now all of the smaller ships carry webs, so I must not get close to them. If I were orbiting at 15 kilometers, I would probably be dead, because I would be slowed down to such an extent that I would not be able to move, and I definitely would not be able to tank that incoming damage. So orbit speed tank is the way to go. Okay, 12 ships remain. I must not get close to that elite Tempest. I'm basically at the edge of their webs and scramblers, but still maintaining a orbit for target painters. Hurricane Guardian, Maelstrom, and one more ship that I didn't catch the name of. Armor at 69%. Capacitor getting low again, 73%. I think I can manage. I should be good. It's not as... well, it was very bad at the start, to be honest. I was a little bit worried. But once I have eliminated all the tackle ships, it was actually fairly easy to continue. Now my advice would be to go after the ships with target painters after you clear all of the ships that have webs and scramblers, at least the ones that can reach you. The ones that are far away from you are not a problem, but the ones that tackle you at the start of the wave, yeah, you should be focusing them first and then try to eliminate all of the ships with target painters, because target painters are definitely a big problem here. And don't use the micro observers unless you are orbiting at 150 kilometers. If you are orbiting at 150 kilometers, then they will not do much damage to you, but be careful because the elite battleships might sneak up on you, so make sure that you keep an eye on the elite battleships. Now, speaking of the elite battleships, well, there's one of them, the Elite Tempest, and I believe there is one more somewhere. I think one of them is actually a sniper, and that sniper is doing some damage. I think the elite battleship, the sniper battleship, is the one who's doing the most damage to me. Now the capacitor is getting uncomfortably low. The armor is also getting uncomfortably low, and I have 60 seconds until the capacitor battery is up and running, so I have to make sure that I try to clear all of the nasty ships first, and I went after the Elite Tempest. Capacitor 30%, armor 38%, 46% now, capacitor battery at 40 seconds. You know, 40 seconds might not seem like a long time, but it sure is long when you really need the capacitor battery to be up. It feels like I have to wait for years for the capacitor battery to come out of cooldown. But once it's back, once it's up and running, I should have enough capacitor to repair the armor. 43%, yeah, that's not looking good. Okay, battery up, armor repair will be active for the next 44 seconds, which should mean I will be able to recover a big chunk of armor, and the main capacitor of the ship can relax a little bit, so the capacitor battery is now back into cooldown. And I am at 52% armor. Well, honestly, I expected a bit more. Definitely regretting that I did not use the extra armor repair on the nanocore. Would be helping out a lot. So if you want to fly the Prophecy 2 command, there is currently a Exile nanocore on the Concord Pass window, where you can buy it for 38,000 Concord points, which means it's farmable, it's free, and it's definitely one of the best nanocores for this ship. The extra armor repair is going to be fantastic, so yeah, that's my mistake for actually not taking that nanocore, that bonus on the nanocore. I went with the extra drone damage because I thought that I would need the DPS more than I would need tank, but I was wrong. The DPS is actually already good, so the extra armor repair is the way to go for this nanocore. Now here I'm trying to web that Tempest, but for some reason the ship does not like to be in the orbit, and it doesn't want to orbit at the designated range that I have set up. But it should not be a big problem. The armor is now in a much better shape, thankfully, after the DPS. After the DPS got removed, the armor of the ship started to to go back up, and the capacitor also started to go back up. Well then, the last 11 ships. Once I destroy this Elite Tempest, I think it's going to be much easier. But I have to say, this is definitely one of the more difficult storylines that I have done so far. Definitely a bit more challenging because other storylines don't have these fast battleships. Most of them are actually quite slow, easily doable with a sniper. This can also be easily doable with a sniper. However, again, the fast elite ships might surprise you, and don't let them surprise you. Always be ready to shoot them down the second they appear, because they are very fast and you don't want them to get close to you. Can be quite traumatic if they do, especially if you have no stabs or if you have no tank in your sniper. Now, the battleship that I did use, the battleships that I used were Typhoon and the Barghest. They were pretty good for this job. They would probably do this really well, especially the Barghest with its extra long range. And the Barghest is actually also fairly fast, so you can easily orbit around all of these ships at 150 plus kilometers, and that should be fairly safe, although the elite ships might be fast, so you might have to chase them around a little bit. With drones, that's not a problem. With drones, you can easily go and orbit around the target while the drones go and chase the target. Well then, this is the last ship of the mission and the last ship of the final wave. I have to say, this was quite the exciting storyline to run. The last two waves of the last, I guess, encounter were definitely quite challenging, and this ship does pass the test. Now, of course, I said that I will have to change some things, and yes, I will have to go and change some things. Mainly, I want to change the capacitor performance of this prophecy. So, all of the other rigs can pass. The modules also can easily pass, but the engineering rigs have to be improved. Mainly, if you're planning to fly this ship, go for full capacitor performance.
Autopilot
Basically, if you have to
engaged.
use integration rigs for capacitor, use them. It will definitely be very helpful for this ship. So, with that being said, hope that you enjoyed this this run with the Prophecy to Command. This is still a very scary ship, a very fun to fly ship. I honestly really like the Prophecy to Command, so I really hope that I was able to help you at fitting this ship, and I hope that I was able to at least help you to decide what type of build you might want for this ship. So with that being said, stay safe, I love you all, and I'll see you next time.